Imagine waking up every morning with a crushing weight on your chest. Not because of an illness, but because of debt. $50,000. For Mark, this wasn't just a number on paper. It was the shadow that followed him everywhere. Every phone call felt like bad news. Every bill felt heavier than the last. But what if I told you this same man, the one drowning in debt, would one day walk into complete financial freedom? This is not just a story about money. It's a story about discipline, courage, and the power of small steps leading to life-changing results. Welcome to Deep Dollar Stories. Today, we follow Mark's journey, from debt to freedom, and discover the lessons that can change your financial future too. Mark's story doesn't begin with disaster. In fact, if you met him in his 20s, you might think he had everything figured out. He had graduated from a decent university, found a stable job in marketing, and rented a small but comfortable apartment in the city. He wasn't rich, but he was doing okay. Or at least, that's what he told himself, and the world around him. Like many young professionals, Mark felt the pressure to live a lifestyle that looked successful. His friends posted pictures of vacations in Greece and Italy, brand new cars, and trendy nights out. Mark didn't want to feel left behind. So when the credit card offers started arriving in the mail, he didn't hesitate. After all, everyone had a credit card. What harm could it do? At first, the spending was harmless, or so he believed. A nice dinner to celebrate a work promotion. A new flat-screen TV when the old one still worked perfectly fine. A weekend trip with friends where he charged everything to his card because, as he told himself, I'll pay it off next month. But next month never came. The balance grew little by little, and with every statement, the interest charges seemed to multiply. By the time Mark realized he had over $5,000 on his first card, the minimum payments were already eating into his paycheck. Still, he told himself it was manageable. That's when the second card arrived, and then a third. It wasn't long before Mark was juggling multiple balances, shifting money from one card to another, convincing himself he was in control. But the truth was, the debt was controlling him. On top of that, Mark had student loans that he had been ignoring, telling himself he'd deal with them later. He had a car loan that came with monthly payments he could barely afford, and of course rent in the city that seemed to rise every year. By the age of 32, the numbers had become crushing. Nearly $50,000 in debt. Half of it was high-interest credit cards. The rest split between loans and unpaid bills. The stress wasn't just financial. It was emotional, mental, and even physical. Mark started to lose sleep. He would lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, replaying every decision that had brought him here. His chest would tighten every time he opened the mailbox, annoyed, terrified of finding another overdue notice. Phone calls from unknown numbers made his heart race. Was it a debt collector? Was someone about to sue him? He started avoiding friends. It wasn't that he didn't care about them. He just couldn't face the embarrassment of admitting his situation. When his friends invited him out, he'd make excuses about being busy or tired. Inside, he felt shame. How could he tell them he couldn't even afford dinner? Even with family, Mark kept his struggle hidden. When his parents asked how he was doing, he'd smile and say, "Everything's fine." But inside, he was drowning. At work, the stress followed him like a shadow. He struggled to focus, worried constantly about bills, and his performance began to slip. His boss noticed, but Mark brushed it off, saying he just needed some rest. In reality, he was terrified of losing his job, the only thing standing between him and total collapse. The worst part wasn't just the money. It was the hopelessness. Every time he tried to make a dent in the debt, the interest swallowed it up. Pay $200, and $180 would disappear into fees and charges. It felt like quicksand. The harder he fought, the deeper he sank. And so, Mark began to isolate himself further. He stopped checking his bank balance. He ignored the mounting bills on his kitchen table. He avoided calls, emails, even conversations about money. It was easier to pretend the problem didn't exist, even though it consumed his every waking thought. Mark was living two lives. To the world, he was just another young man trying to make it in the city. To himself, he was a prisoner, trapped in a cycle of debt, shame, and fear. And yet, somewhere deep inside, he knew this couldn't last forever. There would come a breaking point, a moment when the burden became too heavy, when the lies and excuses would no longer work. A moment when he would be forced to face the reality he had been running from. For Mark, that moment was approaching faster than he realized. The debt trap had closed around him. And soon, something had to give. Mark's breaking point didn't arrive in one dramatic moment, like in the movies. It came slowly, painfully, like the steady drip of water wearing away stone. But eventually, there was one day, one phone call, that changed everything. It was a Tuesday morning. Mark was at work, sitting in his cubicle, staring blankly at his computer screen. He hadn't slept well the night before. Bills were stacked on his kitchen counter at home, unopened. His phone vibrated. The number was unfamiliar, but Mark knew who it was. Another debt collector. For months, he had avoided these calls. But this time, something inside him broke. Instead of ignoring it, he answered. "Mr. Davis," the voice on the other end said, "this is a courtesy call. Your account is seriously past due. If you don't make a payment today, we'll have no choice but to escalate." Mark's heart pounded. He tried to explain. He told the caller he just needed more time, that he was doing his best. But the response was firm, almost robotic. "Time has run out." When the call ended, Mark sat frozen. His hands were shaking. His coworkers typed away at their keyboards, sipping coffee, laughing at small jokes. For them, it was just another day. For Mark, it felt like the walls were closing in. That night, for the first time in months, he didn't distract himself with TV or scrolling through his phone. He sat at his kitchen table, staring at the pile of unopened envelopes. His chest tightened as he reached for the first one, then another, and another. By midnight, every bill was open, spread across the table like evidence of a crime. The numbers were staggering. Minimum payments he could never meet. Interest rates that felt like punishment. A total of nearly $50,000. Mark put his head in his hands. He thought about bankruptcy, about running away, about giving up completely. The shame was overwhelming. But in that silence, in that dark, desperate moment, something unexpected happened. He felt clarity. For the first time, he wasn't pretending. He wasn't hiding. He was staring at the truth. And as painful as it was, it felt strangely freeing. Mark realized that while he couldn't change the past, he could change the future. He couldn't erase the debt overnight, but he could decide, right there, that he would no longer ignore it. The next morning, he did something he hadn't done in years. He asked for help. First, he called his older sister, Emily. For years, he had avoided telling her the truth, afraid of her judgment. But when he finally confessed, she didn't scold him. She listened. And then she said something that stuck with him. "Mark, you've been carrying this alone for too long. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to start." Those words became a spark. Over the next week, Mark began to take small but radical steps. He made a list of every debt he owed. No more hiding. He downloaded a free budgeting app and entered every expense. For the first time, he saw where his money was actually going. Coffee runs, subscriptions he never used, impulse purchases that added up to hundreds each month. The picture was ugly, but it was real. He canceled the subscriptions. He sold a few things online. A guitar he never played, an old camera, a stack of clothes he hadn't worn in years. The cash wasn't much, but it gave him momentum. Next, he called each credit card company. The conversations were humiliating, but necessary. He asked about lower interest rates, hardship programs, anything that could give him a little breathing room. Some said no, but one agreed to reduce his rate if he committed to automatic payments. It wasn't much, but it was progress. Mark also began to educate himself. He checked out books from the library on personal finance. He listened to podcasts during his commute. He learned about the debt snowball method, paying off the smallest debts first for quick wins, and the debt avalanche, targeting high-interest balances to save money long-term. He didn't know which was best, but he knew this. Doing nothing was no longer an option. Within a month, Mark had cut his monthly expenses by nearly 30%. He cooked at home instead of eating out. He walked instead of driving when he could. He even picked up a side gig on weekends, delivering groceries. It wasn't glamorous, but it added an extra $200 a week. And slowly, something inside Mark shifted. Each small payment, each canceled expense, each step forward gave him strength. The hopelessness that once consumed him began to fade, replaced by determination. For the first time in years, Mark felt control returning to his life. He wasn't free yet, far from it. The road ahead was long, difficult, and uncertain. But he was no longer drowning. He was swimming, one stroke at a time. The turning point wasn't a miracle. It wasn't luck. It was the moment Mark stopped running from his problems and faced them head on. And that moment would change everything. When Mark decided to face his debt, he knew willpower alone was not enough. He needed a clear plan, a roadmap to escape the $50,000 trap. The first step was painful but necessary. He wrote everything down. Credit card 1, $12,300. Credit card 2, $8,700. Credit card 3, $5,000. Car loan, $10,000. Student loan, $14,000. The total was more than $50,000. The minimum payments were almost $1,200 each month. Now, the truth was on paper. He could no longer hide. Next, he had to choose a strategy. The debt snowball or the debt avalanche. The snowball meant paying off the smallest debt first. Quick wins, fast motivation. The avalanche meant attacking the highest interest first. It saves money in the long run. Mark chose a hybrid. He started with the highest interest card, but celebrated every balance he cleared. Then came lifestyle surgery. He cut expenses everywhere. No more $5 coffees, no more streaming subscriptions. He switched to a cheaper phone plan. He even moved into a smaller apartment, saving $400 a month. It was not easy. It felt like going backward. But every cut was a victory. Within 3 months, he saved almost $1,000 each month. Still, saving was not enough. He needed more income. So he worked side hustles. Grocery deliveries on weekends, freelance marketing projects online. Selling old items, a guitar, a camera, clothes he never wore. At first it was only $200 here, $300 there. But soon he was making $1,000 extra each month. Every dollar went directly to debt. To stay disciplined, Mark automated his payments. The minimums were covered automatically. Any extra money went straight to the highest interest card. No more missed payments, no more excuses. 6 months later, he made his first big breakthrough. Credit card 3, $5,000. Paid in full. He took the card, wrote "paid in full" across it. Then he cut it in half. It was a powerful moment. For the first time in years, one debt was gone. That small win gave him momentum. He drew a chart on his wall. Every $500 he paid, he colored a box. Slowly, the wall filled with progress. Not every month was smooth. Unexpected bills came up, car repairs, medical costs. Sometimes it felt like sliding backwards. But this time, he did not give up. His sister checked in every week. He listened to podcasts that inspired him. He repeated one phrase: "Debt is temporary. Freedom is forever." And slowly, the setbacks became speed bumps, not dead ends. 2 years later, the numbers told the story. Credit card 1 paid off. Credit card 2 paid off. Credit card 3 paid off. Car loan almost gone, only $1,200 left. Student loan down to $8,000. Mark had crushed more than $40,000 in debt. The man who once hid from his bills now faced them with pride. His plan worked, not because it was perfect, but because he refused to quit. Step by step, dollar by dollar, Mark was climbing out of the hole. The mountain of debt was shrinking, and freedom was finally in sight. 2 years turned into 3, 3 turned into 4. Mark kept paying, month after month. Side hustles, small sacrifices. Every choice brought him closer to freedom. And then, one morning, it happened. He logged into his account and saw a balance of 0. The last payment on his student loan had cleared. After years of struggle, Mark was debt-free. The feeling was impossible to describe. No more collection calls, no more late fees, no more living in fear of the mailbox. For the first time in his adult life, every dollar he earned was his. But here's the truth. The money wasn't the only victory. The real change was inside Mark himself. He had learned to live with discipline. He had learned that happiness does not come from credit cards or new gadgets. It comes from freedom, peace of mind, and control over your future. With no debt, Mark started building savings, an emergency fund, investments in simple index funds. Slowly, his net worth grew. The same man who once drowned in $50,000 of debt was now building wealth, step by step. Mark's journey is proof that financial freedom is possible. Not easy, not quick, but possible. So what can we learn from his story? First, face your numbers. Ignoring them only makes them worse. Second, cut expenses without fear. Small sacrifices add up. Third, increase income where you can. Every extra dollar matters. Fourth, automate payments. Remove excuses. Fifth, stay consistent. Even slow progress is progress. Mark's story isn't unique because he's special. It's powerful because he is ordinary. He made mistakes, like so many of us, but he proved that with honesty, effort, and persistence, anyone can turn debt into freedom. This is more than a money story. It is a story of courage, of resilience, and of hope. Because if Mark could do it, so can you. This was Deep Dollar Stories. Deep stories, smart lessons. Your journey to financial freedom starts now.